This tutorial was brought to you thanks to the supporters on the screen. Check out TAPgiles.com to find more Dreams resources, donate to support my work, or engage my services to get private instruction or help on a project one-on-one. I set out a challenge to remix this and use it for something cool. I'll show you these. The thumbnails show this is a single stroke and it goes around like that. And that goes like that for some reason, that goes like that. The X's go one stroke like that, one stroke like that, or up like that and down like that. And you can of course like adjust these how you want. Make stuff like this pretty easy to do. And all that's going on with the logic there is it's just animating the end like that. And this is obviously like adjusted as well to make this specific one. But that means that this is a single painting and this is a single painting. You can of course like make them separate for just this one or something. But it means like the logic is super simple. It's just that. And that's the whole animation. And for this, it's got fade in and out. And then you expand it like that. I actually put them both at the middle and then like expand them out evenly on both sides to make it so it's like expanding out. Very cool to see what other people use it for. That's the kind of thing that I think about when making like paint symbols or whatever, is I think about the direction of the strokes. So like if you do that, it all moves nicely in one direction and it's not like flailing out and stuff. And if you want to do that, or you want to do that and animate it, and it all just kind of makes sense. It's easy to make stuff that starts not making sense, basically, but it's worth thinking about to make using it in lots of different ways a lot easier than if you just didn't think about it at all. So I thought I'd teach some stuff about paint and how it can be used in different ways, and things to think about when creating a paint effect while building it, which will make using it later on a lot easier. So first thing I'll show is how to make a circle. This kind of principle is sort of the basis of the whole idea of how to make paint in a very specific way so that you can have very precise lines and things like that. Because like a circle is quite difficult to draw, even if I was using the moves, and even if you're a great artist, it can still be very difficult to draw just freehand like that and get it like really perfect and precise. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it like this. So I've put down a single fleck and I'm going to group that up with a sculpt. And now I'm going to add a rotator. And I've just surface snapped it by holding L1 and then letting go. And now that is going to apply to that whole group. And let's turn up the rotation strength and damping and turn the speed way down. And we want it to rotate kind of round that way. So we need that circle to look like that as well. Let's grab the stalk and put that up. And now that is rotating this way. And you can make it as slow as you want. Slower means you're more likely to get it accurate to a circle, and faster means it could like mess up. I'll just demonstrate what I'm going to do with a faster speed. So the cool thing about this is it doesn't really matter where you start from. You just turn on surface snap. That means it will snap to the surface. You'll want to scope out first and actually add another reference point. So I'm going to put a dot there, or I'm going to make it a bit further out there. And this is just going to be a reference point that doesn't move with the rest of the group. And now I go in here and edit, and I'll use black again. Let's scope in here, and I want to keep the corner of this fleck on the corner of that white fleck as it's moving around. So if I just play and I hold X, now it's drawing out roughly in that position, and then I let go when it gets to the end. So that actually works pretty fine. but we kind of went past the end there. So if I just have a look at that, yeah, so we have some overlap, which isn't ideal. If you go slower, then you can time that better. Alternatively, we can just adjust this. That's probably going to be fine for later, as we'll see. And then I want to kind of flatten this so that instead of it having this like tail bit on the end, so if we want to like set that permanently, and I'll just demonstrate better with just like, let's say we just wanted that curve, then we can make a new painting. Do that, there we go. And then you select both paintings and click on merge paintings. And now if I go in here, now this is a stroke. Oh, let's turn off that. This is a stroke and that is a stroke. So we can just delete that other one that we don't actually want. But now this one has no none of this setting. So we've just like chopped out a piece of it. And that will apply to like if you have a painting with lots of lines in it and you adjust that, then it actually adjusts on all of the lines, so it's something to be aware of. Now if I make a new painting and merge, then that whole painting doesn't have that setting anymore, but the ends and starts of those strokes have now been chopped off. So you can delete the extra one and you have the thing that you wanted. So that makes it easy to kind of chop paint lines up into separate parts. So I'm going to increase looseness. There's a cool trick where if you want to increase looseness even more, I can't increase looseness anymore because it actually just affects that. If I press triangle, it's going to reduce looseness setting on the painting, and now it's increasing it. But let's see if this works. If I use the volume brush, I can increase it even more because I'm affecting the flecks within the smoke. So I can just keep on. Whoa. Another way is to, if I had this one and I wanted to increase the looseness more than this, I could flatten it by doing that merging trick where I merge it with another painting and then I delete that other painting. Now this looseness is set to 0, but it's kept that thickness of the flecks, so now I can increase it even more. So it's another thing that is affected by the flattening of a painting like that. Cool. So you just want to chop this end bit off. So I've just taken this down a few percentages. And now we want to chop it up. So let's do that. And now we have that, and it has no end point or start point. Cool, so we've like permanently chopped off the end of that stroke, and we don't need that central fleck anymore. But now you can see it looks kind of jagged. Around here it's fine. It's all kind of going in the right direction, but around here it's not going in the right direction. So to accentuate that so it's really clear, I'd like to turn on flow and play time. Oh, let's just turn off the rotator now. Play time, and you can see that these are going in this direction and these are kind of off doing their own thing. So we want to correct that, and we can do that by using the style mode comb tool, and then if I press up on the D-pad it turns this volume brush on so that I can affect just specific flecks within the painting. And I'll hold R1 to kind of zoom in and out from where the imp is, and then I'll scale it up a bit more. So now if I drag along like that, then I can kind of comb these into shape. And this will actually apply to these sculpts as well, so if you don't want that to happen, you might want to move the sculpt out of the way. So basically you spend some time kind of combing this into line like that. And I won't get it perfect because I spent the time to do that elsewhere anyway. Even if you don't need that flow, it will still look better. It will look more in line with the actual line of the circle as you imagine it. And then if you ever want to turn this circle into having just a bit of animation like that, you can just turn it on instead of having to worry about trying to get the flow to work correctly again. So what if you wanted to, instead of rotating it to make a circle, if you wanted to make a square or something else. So let's add a base fleck again. Right, so I'll put it not surface snapped, but on grid. And this is just so I have like a central point. And now if I turn on kaleidoscope, I want to have 4 corners to this square, so I'll do that. And now I've got 4 corners perfectly kind of aligned to each other. Now I can put that back down there, just so they barely stick out. And that's just for reference again, so I'll make that a different colour. And I'll make this like a grey. And now I'll use another fleck, surface snapped, and I'll make it black. And I'll tap that there. This is yet another reference sort of thing. This will be used to describe the actual shape of the thing we want to draw. So now we actually animate it. So if we go like that, I'll just show you the basic idea actually. I'll turn on a action recorder, and we basically want to go over there, up there, over there, down there, and I'll just do a squeal at the end. So that's moving all correctly. So now we can actually do the same thing as we did for that circle, where we move the actual painting object itself, and then we just hold X until it's finished. So I'll just put this into a timeline. There, and we don't want to loop. And we'll have like a bit at the beginning and a bit at the end. So we have like some time to prepare or whatever. So now we go down here and edit this painting that we've animated. And it doesn't matter again where we start, because it will just make the same shape. So if I just hold it down here, it's going to recreate that shape, but as an actual painting. And if I hold it over here, it will make exactly the same shape again. So I'm going to do what I did before though, and put it next to this reference. First I'm just going to slow this down a bit. Now I edit that. And now I'll play time and then hold X. And job done. And now I've drawn that same shape down here. So if instead of using an action recorder, we use keyframes, so I'll just delete that, and we get one stroke, but we get a complicated shape out of that just one stroke. So if we use keyframes to move it instead, and again, like you can do this kind of stuff on the grid if you want to make sure it's actually perfect. And remember to, you can just use the first keyframe at the end so it kind of loops around to the start. Also, if you want to make sure the corners are crisp, you can make these a little bit fatter in here to make sure it like stops there long enough, because if it goes straight through, it could like try and cut out the corner and you'll end up with rounded corners. So I'll just make that last over there. Yeah, so now we can hit that, and I'll play time. And you can see it trying to get the flecks to go in the right direction, but kind of generally not quite getting there. So again, you can use the comb tool. So we go back to our comb tool, and that's going like up like that. And with straight lines, it's a lot easier because you can just move it in one direction. You can hold L2 to adjust the rotation of the comb tool, but it's a bit tricky. That, and you've got something akin to square, and then you can turn up this to make sure it's not too bad. That's not going to be needed. And let's say we wanted to chop that end off because it's just a slight bit too long, then we can just do that and do the same trick we did before, where we merge them to flatten that edit. And now it doesn't go too far to the end, and hopefully that'll fix it a bit for the flow. Things like that. So that's how I made the X and the square and the triangle and the circle, using that kind of animating the actual painting object technique. And then for my animating of it, I took those and then started chopping them up by using that technique where I just want half the circle, so let's just go to 50%. And then we merge it with another painting. And then we delete that other painting from it. And then we just have two of them, and we can go, or we can edit in there to make it just be one painting again. And I'll just put it there. And now it looks like a normal circle, but then you can animate it in different ways. So you can kind of chop these shapes up and animate it so that you can animate it easier. Stuff like that. To make whatever you want. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new. Go to patreon.com/TAPgiles to get 5 hours of tutorials early for $3. Here's a preview of what you can learn if you choose to become a supporter.